Thank you very much for being with us today. Good afternoon, and welcome to our webinar, Evolving Higher Education, Teaching the Finance and Accounting Students of Today. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping before we get started, just to let you know that this session is being recorded, and we'll be able to make it available to you after the session in case there's anything you want to refer back to, and we'll be able to share it with a wider audience also. And secondly, just to say we very, very much welcome questions, so please do ask them as we go along using the Q&A functionality. So today we're going to be looking at how teaching and learning needs to adapt to the students and the environment of today, which is very different to even 5 or 10 years ago. And we're very privileged today to be joined by David Hillier, who is the Associate Principal and Executive Dean of the University of Strathclyde Business School. And more importantly, I would say, author of our best-selling corporate finance text and suite, in fact, who will be chairing the discussion today. So thank you, David. And joining him are Bertrand Gros-Lambert, who is a Professor of Finance at Schema Business School, who is also a member of our Editorial Advisory Board and has worked very closely with us as a subject matter expert. We also have Orla Feeney, who is Programme Director for Accounting and Finance at Dublin City University Business School. And last but definitely not least, we have Mike Farrell, who's a lecturer in accounting at Cork University Business School, and who has recently joined the author team for our flagship Introduction to Financial Accounting text. That's a very brief potted version of their bios. I hope you've been able to see the fuller version on the registration page when you join this webinar. So thank you to all of us for joining today. And without further ado, especially as we're a little bit delayed, I will hand over to David now to get this session up and running. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Ros. It's great to be here, and it's great that there's so many people online, and we've also got a panel. I'll be chairing today's session. We are running slightly late, so I will try and keep it as tight as possible. I am keen to have as many questions from all the attendees, and so it might be worthwhile in terms of just in how we engage. We'll be very quick in terms of the panel, but then we'll move it on to the actual questions for each section. We've probably got about 8 minutes for a number of different areas. We're going to start off by talking about how we think the education and teaching in finance and accounting has changed, and what's required today from students. We're then going to go into that, like what about the student needs? What is it that students are looking for, and how can we optimise our education and the education that we provide to the students? We'll then look at the digital resources, what's needed, how things have changed. Just before we started, we were talking about AI and large language models, and how quickly things have changed over the last couple of years. And just now, even today, I got a document out from the university basically embedding AGI, but generative AI into the way that we educate and accepting that. So things are changing very quickly. We'll then go on to talk about Connect, smart book experiences. Really, this is where we can get feedback and how we can actually improve this and how we can improve both student progress and feedback, but also for us to maybe showcase some of the good things that's in Connect that you might find interesting, and then we can just open up to broader questions. So if I'm going to start off by just setting the scene. I've been with McGraw Hill since 2008. I've got 3 books in the portfolio. One is Corporate Finance, which we call the Big Book. There's Fundamentals of Corporate Finance, which is more of a generalist approach to corporate finance. And then finally, I've got Financial Markets and Corporate Strategy, which is a more advanced level text for specialists. And that tends to be used in PhD programs. When I first started into where we are just now, things have changed a lot. Every 3 years, which is the cycle for publication of all the books, the world changes massively, and we have to adapt the book accordingly. We started back in 2008 when we started. We just had the financial crisis, and we've gone through every single potential issue that we could face. And the fifth edition is just about to be published. We've actually completed it. And there we've got a lot more about artificial intelligence. Sustainability is a really big thing. The collapse of globalization, polarization of the world, fintech, technology, and that has really changed how companies operate. And when I teach, I now teach because I'm much more in a management role and leadership role in the university. I only really get brought in to teach the corporates and the exec ed. And when I'm teaching the exec ed, I'm dealing with people around about maybe 30s, late 20s, going on to the age of 40. So they're looking for very different things from, say, undergraduates that are wanting to understand the I suppose, the concepts and need to understand the concepts. Those are much at the higher level, and the way I'm engaging with, the big thing they're looking for is application. They need to see that anything that we cover is going to be able to be used immediately after the session. And that for us is in terms of how we change the book, and also where Connect comes in, is they need to get those skills and need to get those skills embedded. So that's my experience. But I wonder, just in terms of us moving forward, if I can start off with Bertrand. Bertrand, can you maybe talk about your engagement with students, how you use the book, and the way that you see the teaching has evolved to modern day in 2024?
Sure. Thank you very much, David, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm responsible for a course that is delivered to many students. It's a course M1 for corporate finance for students that are across all our campuses. So basically, it's 1,800 students every semester. So it's a big course, and the very interesting point about Connect is that we can very easily track the students' engagement in the reading. And so the way we use Connect, it's as a continuous assessment tool. So every week we ask the students to read some chapters related to the coming teaching we're going to deliver. So we are sure that they start with some foundations. They don't come from scratch in the course, in the classroom. And so if they read the book through Connect every week, it gives them some 10% of the final grade. And that's very convenient way to monitor their engagement, to make sure that the whole cohort is following the pace and is reading the book in due time. So it's very helpful.
Thanks, Bertrand. That's very helpful. So if I can go now to Orla. Orla, how do you engage with the students? How have things changed, and how can Connect, or how has Connect been useful to you?
How are you? Nice to see you. Look, I think one of the most things we've observed with our students in the last few years is a real, look, with the best will in the world, a decline in engagement. It's been hard to get them into a classroom. It's been hard to get them to stay engaged. COVID just triggered. It was already taking place, but COVID just triggered something. So getting them into a classroom, getting them to buy a book, getting them to engage with a syllabus is becoming more challenging. So Connect has probably helped us in two ways. Number one, by using quizzes. It prompts engagement. Well, it forces engagement, really, but it forces initially, and then thereafter prompts early engagement. So listen, we get our first years in, we give them a couple of weeks to go bananas and not know what they're at, but we give them a quiz on Connect. Within a couple of weeks, they might do poorly in it, and then they say, okay, right, I'm going to have to engage with this. Or they do well in it and they go, okay, I'm going to be okay here. But either way, it does an important job. And those quizzes are really important. And I think particularly for the early years, the other thing that's really useful for us with Connect in response to the changing in students is smart book reading. We can't get our accounting students to read. We just can't. They just want to go and hammer at calculations and spreadsheets and things. And we're trying to teach them that the profession of accounting has changed dramatically, and we need them to engage with material in a slightly different way than they might have a decade ago. So again, Connect gives us an opportunity to, again, force, but prompt engagement with reading. And look, I think there's a proliferation of buzzwords out there now that students are very intimidated by, like sustainability, ESG, digital business, ChatGPT, you know, generative AI. There's a lot of terms out there, and it freaks them out. At least giving them access to smart book readings that maybe demystify some of these terms is really, really important now, as opposed to maybe a couple of years ago. And the fact that Connect is providing us with a tool to do that, that's great.
I think that thing about the lack of engagement since COVID, there's a term that we use in Scotland, and I don't know if it is used elsewhere, but we talk about the COVID kids, how because of the 2 years of effective lockdown, that young people haven't had those developmental experiences. And as they come through the system and they go into university, they're really finding it difficult to adapt and to socialise.
Yeah.
Which is a real issue, and we found that with our kids coming in and into the undergraduate, and it's going through the undergraduate system. The postgraduates still seem to be okay, but I fully expect that this, you know, there's a bulge that's going through where we're going to need different tools to enforce engagement, like you said, Orla. Michael, I think Orla made some great points there about just the changing dynamic of the students, which we'll come back to. But do you want to just say how you've used Connect and in the way that, you know, you're engaging with students and the types of students that you're teaching in Cork?
Yeah, so it's kind of linking in with Orla's point and just talking about the changing dynamics where students have more resources than they've ever had. And that's kind of where the problem is for me. I think as lecturers, we need to realize that the whole goal we have now is to make things comprehensive. We need to kind of put things in context, because I think the day of saying, look, there's all this great information available on the internet, but it's useful, for example, when I use the accounting text, that everything kind of circles around the text, that they can at least say, whatever random stuff I'm looking at online, whatever stuff I'm using ChatGPT for, I need to bring it back to one source topic. And I think that's very useful for everyone to, when you're teaching, rather than saying, look, you've got this information here, you've got this information here, because even with a basic introduction financial accounting text, you could pick up 3 different texts and they could say the same thing in 3 different ways. And sometimes even as a lecturer, you're kind of wondering how the 3 things come together. So trying to make sure, or trying to assume that a student is going to understand that is quite difficult. The other thing I'd want to point out as well is with the introduction of these technologies, particularly for me, when I heavily use it for a first year accounting course, where I have to be very cognizant that these guys' education experience up to now has been very different. You know, it's rote learning, it's very prescribed information. So I think lecturers have to be very careful that they're suddenly going to start a first year accounting module in their university, which is going to be radical, it's going to be cutting edge. You might find that your students are not able for that based on the fact that they've had an education cycle up to now that is not what has happened. So one of the things I'm very careful of is that there's acknowledgement of the experiences they've had to date. And kind of like Orla said, it's not just this massive revolutionary change and they're suddenly swamped, that we recognize that to change them from a mindset that they may have coming in from high school or secondary school does take time, and we need to be fair with them when we do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I know, and that takes us really nicely into the next stage. What is it that students need now? We'll open this up to questions once we've gone through the main issues, and I think it's important that we get that engagement from you. But you know, what do students need? They have more needs. They have greater needs. We also have to ensure engagement, as we said, and got to do it in different ways. Orla, I'm going to start with you. If you had to put, like, say, the top 3 needs of students today in terms of who you're engaging with as priorities for giving advice, okay, this is what is needed. What would you say those are? And what ones can be addressed by platforms like Connect, and what others actually you need other approaches to them?
I actually think, particularly with regard to accounting students, it's a challenge because look, we need to give them their nuts and bolts. We need to give them their exemption related content, you know. They need to do their computations, they need to do their examinations or analysis, you know, all of these different things. But trying to get them to engage with their discipline at any deeper level is really, really challenging. And we need to be doing that from first year. The profession has changed, and one of the key problems I have with first years when they come in is they have a very stereotypical view of what accounting is and what accountants are and what the profession is, and they almost decide what they're going to be good at. Oh, I'm mathsy and that's all there is to it. Don't expect me to go engaging with anything more theoretical, or don't expect me to engage with current issues. And nearly having to strip that out of them. You know, they're terrified of reading, they're terrified of writing, they're terrified of writing a critical piece evaluating some business scenario. No, I'll just do a comp. No, you need to actually go into it in a slightly deeper level. And I find that one of the biggest challenges in teaching accountants. And I think, to be fair, Connect provides us with some opportunities to address that with the smart book reading, even with the nature of the questions, you know, giving us something to examine things at a deeper level. So that'd be my number one thing. And I'm going on for so long, I mightn't give you three. But the other thing is, at the same time, understanding that students seem to learn differently. And they learn very differently to how I learned. And maybe people of my generation might have learned. I hate the expression, but we used this expression during COVID of the Netflix style, and giving students the opportunity to learn when they wanted to learn, to access material when they wanted to, do it in their own time. And I don't like it as an expression, but I do think it's something we have to tap into. And saying to a student, look, you have this amount of material, and you can engage with it when it works for you, whether that's on the bus on your commute, whether it's when you're on a break from work. We can't assume that all of these kids have hours and hours to spend in the library. We might have to actually fit in with the way that they're studying a little bit more. And the third thing, just to be, I think what Mike said is so spot on. There is so much bloody information out there to try and bring that together so that they can deal with it. It's overwhelming, and it's overwhelming for us as lecturers as well. Giving them some place where they can go, where they can get good, solid, reliable information, and explaining to them why it's reliable. Why is that reliable? Because it's validated, because it's coming from academic sources. Even that in itself is learning. So I think, I think they're the three things I'd be focusing on. I hope I addressed that question properly.
No, I think that's brilliant. It's great. When you were talking about this, and that, you know, the way I usually try to approach these things is like saying there are 5 things you're trying to get out of any class. There's one is you've got to impart the knowledge, and you can get that through lots of different ways. You've got to give them the skills in order to apply things. We need the experience. I'm looking at, there's a comment that just came in. Sama said, he's struggling with without having hands-on info and expertise. That's where Connect really comes in. And then there's networks, which, is which you need them in the university for, and try to get them involved with things. And then there's just personality development, which is really important, I think, with post-COVID. And this idea that people have to learn differently. At Strathclyde, we've got 40% of our undergrad are coming in from the poorest of society, and they're all working. And a lot of them can't make the lectures. So we have to be able to adapt and be flexible for them. And that's specific, for Strathclyde. But they are different elsewhere. Bertrand, could you maybe talk about it from your experience, what the students that you're dealing with are needing? And I suppose, rather than repeating anything that Orla said, or I've said, any additional or new things that we haven't covered yet?
Sure. Yeah, I agree with Orla 100%. Maybe something else I could add is that I think students, they need an easy access. They need to be able to and actually I was about to say they need to be able to connect, but they need to be able to connect with Connect. And they do it quite easily with Connect. It's available on a smartphone. It's available on a laptop. It's very easily, you can get access to the content just like that, snapping. And so that's one point, the easiness of access. And the second point is it's quite entertaining. It's very well written. It's the proposal is very nice, very good looking. And so it's more entertaining that a usual standard book that is quite heavy. You need to open everything. It's not that. So even though I am old-fashioned and I love books personally, but from a student's perspective, it's probably more easy to deal with.
One of the things that we tried to do with the books and also with Connect is try and make exercises small, not smaller, but try and make the sections so that they're self-contained to an extent, and then they can be covered in a short period, because again it's that engagement. James is talking about forced engagement is correct language. It does seem quite coercive, doesn't it? But we do need to find some way to get students to engage. Michael, like from your experience with Connect and Smartbook, how have you found engagement to have been impacted? Do you think it's had a big effect, or what would you say about that?
So what we did in the module, we introduced it was just a 5-credit accounting module, but part of the continuous assessment was the reading assignments. And one of the things we did at the time was we argued that we were going to move away from a case where if I give you an assignment, I also have to assess what grade you got on that. And we moved to a situation of just maybe, stop, go. Did you do it or not? And we awarded marks based on that. For some people, like, it makes perfect sense to me on the basis of, not every single piece of assignment we need to assign a kind of grade to. And we were only giving, let's say, a weekly reading assignment might only be 0.5% of the overall module, but even by just giving that 0.5%, engagement was great. And at the end of the module, people said that they did enjoy the reading assignments the most, because even just that small bit of a carrot that was allowed them to come in. I guess the challenges we had to that at the time, again, was you can't just give away marks. But in the grand scheme of things, it didn't work out that way. When we looked at the year-end averages and we looked at the results, we were still very happy with the overall performance on the module. And there's other things you can do as well. But Connect was brilliant for that, in terms of, for me, kind of coming back to Orla's point, there's this element of reading. I think we all kind of say, why can't they sit down and just read? But yet, I know when I'm working, most of my reading is with purpose as well. I'm thinking about what is it at the end of the day I'm reading this work document for. So I think we have to acknowledge that it's not unreasonable that students are in the same spaces as well,
I think, definitely. And this, we've had a question coming in. It's from an anonymous attendee. It's talking about Orla. I don't know if you saw that question. It's students all study and learn in different ways, and through working remotely, asynchronously, synchronously. And can you expand in other ways where digital supports inclusive teaching and learning? And I suppose inclusive also means people with disabilities as well, and that might be worthwhile, talking about that.
Yeah, what really kind of prompted me to think about this the last few months was I had student engagement. I had student meetings over a piece of assessment a few months ago, and I was struck by, and I did them all on a Friday because they didn't have class, and it was master's students, and I was struck by the amount of them that were dressed for work. So they were coming out to speak to me, but they were clearly dressed for work. One guy had a hard hat on, so he was coming out from a construction site. A lot of people were doing them in their car in business clothes. So these guys have, they're juggling postgraduate degrees with, busy jobs. And it really struck me, I can't assume these. And as much and all as we say to them, this is a full-time course, this is your full-time gig, we have to appreciate the reality these guys are coming from. So that has really prompted me in the last year to change my, not delivery, because look, I still have my on-campus time. We're an on-campus university, but in terms of engaging with additional material and engaging with homework type activities, trying to have that in a way where they can do it in their own time as much as possible. Assessment for us is still largely exam-based, particularly in exemption-related subjects. We try and bring in, trying to bring in opportunities to get our accounting students to write and research and critically review is now being attacked by ChatGPT. So, we have a whole other ball game now in terms of engaging with that. But I guess when I talked about that inclusive aspect of advantage that Connect offers, it's really with regard to homework and getting them to engage with material. Our assessment is largely still on campus or is more traditional. But the homework type activities are just giving them a chance to engage with the material in their own way. As we say to them, I can't just say this in a classroom and it goes into your head. You guys have to engage with it yourselves. But maybe changing the way that piece works, I have found something like Connect has been useful for that. They can do the quiz when they want. They can do the smart reading when they want. They can engage with the material, even with some recorded material, some asynchronous recordings, some additional supports. That's there for them to engage with when it suits them.
I think, that it's right. The way things are changing, ChatGPT, as you know, it's totally disrupted the system. And I know that some of the lecturers in our place, they've actually moved away from exams to an extent to go for big group work where it requires presentations, videos, recognizing that now this technology is here. You're not going to you're not going to ignore it. And as long as it's not all ChatGPT's work, and as long as you declare that it might, some lecturers have said that ChatGPT is integral to the class, and others have said, well, okay, it's partial. And I think you just need to embrace that. And that then changes the way in which we engage, and it also changes what we expect from the students. Bertrand does a really good question that I'm going to come to you. And I think it's a superb question. Is, what is needed for success in implementing digital technologies in the classroom? And what mistakes have you learned from in the past? I've got so many. But and also giving the wrong questions in courseworks and getting them all to try and attempt them. Bertrand, do you want to give some the mistakes that you've learned from in the past, and also maybe 3 or 4 hints on how to increase the success of using smart books Connect to improve engagement?
Sure. It's an excellent question. I don't know if I'm going to give you an excellent answer. Actually, so I use it extensively. I use Connect and I use digital technology, but actually I do not use them inside the classroom. I use it as an additional tool to leverage what I'm doing in the classroom before and after. And we have a no laptop policy in our classrooms, and because we don't want to compete with the Champions League students behind their laptop watching football games and stuff like that, and so we want to make sure that they are focused on what we have to teach them. So yeah, maybe the mistake is I don't know if it's a mistake, but I mean that's the way I use it. I use it outside of the classroom, and yes, as a leverage in order to better to be able to go directly straight to the point within the classroom, and then to complement what we've done inside the classroom with additional materials. Some mistakes that I did using Connect at the very beginning. At the beginning, I put too much. I mean, the students, they were overloaded. I was a bit concerned, worried that there would be not enough. And actually, it was exactly the opposite. They were way too much every week, and they could not cope with all the exercises and then the works, the assignments that I was asking them. So, and then we had a discussion with guys at McGraw Hill, and then they helped me to redesign this the way we should use Connect. So that was a mistake that we did at the beginning. Yeah, for the moment, that's what I see.
I know the big mistake I did is I gave them too much as well. So I do MBAs, a lot of MBA students, and I just gave them so much, thinking that that's going to really help them. It actually caused a lot of stress, and so it's being aware of the expectations of on students, and maybe in some cases, particularly with those who are busy or got other jobs, that we actually can set too much on there. So I'm thinking about Bertrand in terms of, there's a question from Rosalind there about spotting at-risk students. Have you used it to spot at-risk students?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
So there's a question here that because you've got a huge cohort across several campuses, do you use Connect and SmartBooks or any technology, maybe not even Connect, to spot at-risk students through lack of engagement, for example?
To what? To follow them?
To
flag them?
identify students that are maybe struggling.
Not really. Not really, actually. I know we could do that. That's something I would like to implement. I know that Connect has these tools that you can. Actually, it was my initial plans at the beginning. I was aware of this opportunity to track the students very early in the class in the course, and then, but because it's so, I mean, of course, I'm not alone, and there are 25 lecturers that are everywhere on all our campuses, and so. But it's it would require an additional involvement, and it's not something that I'm using. But I would like, actually. That's something that is very interesting, and maybe I know that we can follow the students, and for instance, in the first week or second weeks, we see that maybe 10% of them are behind the curve, and so we can contact them, and but it's a lot of time. Yeah.
So thanks, Bertrand. There's another question here that was asking about the support you've had from your institutional leaders. I suppose I'm an institutional leader, so but I think it's different in other places. I have to say, it is a really good question. The difficulty that we've had with Connect is that we have an online learning system, and integrating the Connect with our online system requires the support of learning technologists. But what I have found is that McGraw Hill really reach out and they're really supportive in terms of trying to get a solution for that. I did have really some difficulties. Like one of the corporate MBAs I was doing, the company refused to put data over to the US, and it was all to do with data security. And these are the kind of issues that we face. But the one thing is that I think the team at McGraw Hill have done really a lot to help. So there are difficulties, but I suppose it's in McGraw Hill interest to make sure they resolve it. Michael, have you had any, like, not just with McGraw Hill, but in terms of like support from your own institutional leaders in using
Yes.
technology? And if there's any insights that you can give to the people who are attending today?
The guidance I would give based on my own experience is that it's very hard to go alone on these kind of initiatives. I think one of the things we did a few years ago, just pre-COVID, was my whole accounting department sat down. We basically trashed out what we all thought was a common way forward. And I think, you see, there's a number of benefits here where eventually we settled on McGraw Hill. We said, okay, we're all going to use kind of McGraw Hill textbooks here. And as a result of that, then we are all rowing together. So the head of department is able to put forward a case for the department, which is a lot easier and more straightforward than an individual lecturer putting forward a case for themselves. The second thing then that kind of helps with is that students get familiar with the one system as well. I mean, we all know this ourselves from dealing with different systems. You go onto a different system and then you have to go on, it's quite difficult to do that. And again, it's kind of being fair to the students. If they've got, let's say, some similarities across modules with digitalization, it makes the work way easier. So for me, the key advice is, trying to move forward at a department level as opposed to an individual lecturer level. And again, there's some choices there, like some people might want to go with a different book and stuff, but we found that the pros of kind of having commonalities together really outweighed any cons.
Mm-hmm. And Orla, you spoke before about institutional policies affecting you. Do you want to just maybe respond to that as well, that same question?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I think having your your IS people in-house tuned into this is very important, and we're very lucky in the business school where I am, where I've a super duper learning technologist in-house, and he's mad keen to engage with all these external platforms, and he just makes it easier. But I also find the Connect support really good. I find the guys, even if I use the chat and the students use the chat, but usually I just email the poor devil and he comes back to me pretty quickly. So I find that really useful. I will say one of the challenges of using a platform like Connect, and I think Michael probably speak to this one as well, and that is the financial support. So as it stands right now, we are having our students pay for it. So we have a deal whereby our first years subscribe to it in first year, and that gives them access for 3 years. So it gets them through their degree. And it's been okay. It's, you know, by and large, it's been okay. I personally have some ethical issues in terms of tying assessment into something that they have to pay for. That I struggle with it. I can balance it off based on the fact that I don't think it's an excessive amount of money, and when you balance it out over the 3 years, I think it's fine. So we're okay on that for the moment, but I do think there are challenges with other institutions that maybe won't be able to have their assessment engaged with a platform that the students have to pay for. There's some issues there. Look, in an ideal world, you'll have a university that will pay for it, but it's just not always. It is not always going to be possible. So it wasn't possible in our case.
Yeah, well, for our MBA students, we paid for it, and you know, and so it was given to them as part of their educational journey. Bertrand, there was a question to you. I know you're typing the answer, but I might just ask you. It's gone. Okay, no, sorry. Let's see. It was, you know, how do you find the right level of engagement without fatiguing the students with technology, and how do you maintain that level of engagement week on week? Yeah, you're on mute, Bertrand.
Sorry. Yeah, I was answering on the directly on the text. So the reading, the weekly reading of the chapters makes 10% of the total final grade as a continuous assessment mark. So, and thanks to Connect, we can follow, we can track the students' reading. And so at the end of the semester, I have a record that tells me for each student how much they've done of these weekly assignments. And if they've done at least 80% of the weekly readings, they got 100% of the final mark. And so it's a strong incentive, because there is no there is no bad or wrong or correct answer. It's mostly about reading, and they can repeat as much as they want until they have been able to give the correct answer. Then they go through. So it's quite easy way to get these extra marks, these continuous assessment points. So it keeps them engaged. And fatigue about technology, I don't feel any fatigue about technology. They're really this generation. They're just in. They were born in the smartphone, and so I've never felt any fatigue with technology.
I actually think that they're looking for more technology and more ways and different ways to engage more. It really has changed. We're coming close to the end of times, but we've got another couple of questions. And I'm going to go to Michael for this one. What McGraw Hill Connect capability is most popular with your students, Michael? In fact, I'm going to ask everyone this question because it's a great question. Michael, let's start off with you.
So the way I set it up, the two things that were kind of the most helpful were the reading assignments. They fed back very positively about that, because I think it allowed them to read in a structured way. And I think once they, I suppose maybe they were enjoying that because they were comparing that with the alternative of not having any structure behind their reading. So they were responding positively to it. The other thing I did, and it's kind of maybe important for someone who's thinking of kind of using this technology that hasn't used it before, is don't look at introducing this technology as a complete, I have to throw out the old stuff and bring in all the new stuff. don't be afraid to scale it over a number of terms. So one of the things you could possibly do is bring in small bits of supplemental material like Bertrand does, and slowly but surely move things out and move things in. That kind of helps lecturers an awful lot. I did that before, though, where all I did when I was introducing it was introduce multiple choice questions on different chapters. And my exam was based on big, kind of tough accounting questions, but they really just liked the multiple choice questions as something quick and easy. They thought it was just checking their knowledge. Again, that structure, that they had some quick resource they could go to that basically said, am I where I need to be kind of right now? And so they were the two small things at that time.
Okay, no, great. Orla?
Yeah, I think the students, we have responded very well to regular quizzes, low stakes, regular quizzing. So there had to be some assessment marks tied into it, because once again, if they don't get marks for it, they don't want to do it. So once you were willing to kind of give over 10% or 15% of your marks to some regular low stakes quizzes, and I found I'd set 6 and I'd take their best 4, and then that would feed into 10%. So you're meeting them halfway, and you're letting them, maybe the first 1 or 2 can be poor, and then you have to pull your socks up and get it together. So just giving them the opportunity to learn and grow. But low stakes, I think when you tie in a huge amount of assessment to something like this, you create a lot of work for yourself, because if anything goes wrong, it's a drama. Whereas if it's low stakes, they understand that they'll get rewarded for engaging with it, and those that choose not to engage with it will lose those marks and might kind of learn to regret that as time goes on. But regular quizzes that they get marks for, I found that really helpful. And yeah, I was getting them to engage with material a lot earlier than I would have normally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually, because I do part-time MBA, I use it for all the preparation for the class, so that people are working beforehand and they're doing it any time after work, etc. I also use that. I use the videos as well. I use my own YouTube videos as well as, and I just basically set a syllabus tied to my YouTube videos. In fact, just a small anecdote. I was approached where there was this young boy came up to me, and it was at the graduation. And there was a young boy, he was the son of a wee 6-year-old, and he says, "Are you the person that my mum speaks to every night on the phone?" I said, "What?" And he says, "Because she was watching her videos of me every night before going to bed. So all he did is hear my voice talking." So I thought that was I thought that was quite a funny thing. So yeah, no, but it's that preparation beforehand, I find. We are coming to the end of time, and I think we've got one last question, and I think again we'll start off with Bertrand here. If you could have one silver bullet to solve a specific student engagement problem, what problem would you want to solve, and why? What do you think the solution might be, Bertrand?
Yeah. Well, my main concern when I started to use Connect was to make sure that the students they read on a regular basis, at least on a weekly basis. The course is very dense, so if the students they start to lose ground, if they don't work on a regular basis every week, if they wait the midterm to start to revise and most of them are going to be lost. So that was my main concern. My main concern was to make sure that from day one, they start to be engaged and start to read. And so, and before we had Connect, there was very, very few students who were reading. Now we have maybe not 100% of the cohort, but a very, very large part of the cohort is reading very regularly. And so, and then the silver bullet was Connect, and the continuous assessment mark based on the weekly reading, and the easiness of getting access to the book, and also something that is interesting is that and it was done with the help of the support team at McGraw Hill. They help us to design on a weekly basis the modules within the Connect, so it's very well structured. And the students are not getting lost. They see every week what they have to do. It's goes straight to the point. So and that was the silver bullet.
Yeah, I think and also the McGraw Hill support there is just really is fantastic in terms of putting these programs together. And I just see something coming in from Juan Bora, who's asking for that support, and you should definitely do that. Use the McGraw Hill resources as much as you can to get, basically to help you get these courses online and then into the system. Michael, I'm going to come to you. What do you think your silver bullet would be?
Kind of linked into Orla's point, where I just think the future is going to be low stakes continuous assessment, and with the resources on one person to do all the marking, that ain't going to happen. It's got to be technology driven,
Yeah.
Like me, I still don't like, we've semesterized here, so you've got end of semester exams because our courses have professional exemptions, and we're still very tied to that. So I guess I'd love to move to a more model away from the end of semester exams, which I don't like the high stakes element. I guess a lot of the silver bullet in accounting then comes from a regulatory problem where there is still this, with all this technology moving ahead under the table, at the table, the problem is that there's still this idea that end of year exams, closed book, are the only way that we can assess whether these guys meet the regulatory requirements to get their professional accounting exemptions. And I kind of think that we can do all the work we can and we can kind of move forward, but until something tips the scales a bit more there, I think it's going to still prove difficult to make these initiatives. Often the problem has been that we introduce these initiatives, but we still need to retain the end of year exam, which gives the overload problem to the student. Where, I think a lot of us, if the regulatory requirements dial down, I think you'd see a lot more innovation in the space,
Yeah, you face a particular issue with the accounting qualifications. It's unique to that area for the accreditation. Orla, we're going to finish off with you, and then I'm going to pass it on over to Roz.
Yeah, again, it's speaking to actually what both Bertrand and Michael were saying. We're trying to bring the real world into the classroom as much as we can. We're limited in the extent to which we can do that because we have to cover all of the content for our professional exemptions. Yet at the same time, we need to produce, work-ready graduates. So, we can teach them computations and we can teach them how to, pull together these things. But what will it look like in the real world? And I do think Connect plays a really lovely role for us in helping us. And it's the smart book readings are the big thing. So, having them read a piece that tells us how do you cost a Google search? How do you, what does costing look like not in a widget factory, but actually in a digital technology company? And Connect allows us to do that more. It allows us to bring the real world that these kids are actually going to graduate into. And I'm very focused on undergraduates here, as you can probably tell, but trying to give these kids insight into the real world that they're going to graduate into. And it's really, really difficult to fit that in to a syllabus and to fit that in 10 weeks of teaching or 12 weeks of teaching. So smart book reading gives us a chance to do that. So I think that's probably that, and the low stakes regular testing. They're the two biggies for me in terms of Connect.
Okay, no, fantastic. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this this hour of discussion, and we've answered a lot of your questions. I'm sure there'll be a lot of follow-up. So I'm now going to pass it on to Roz, and Roz, you can talk about next steps and anything else.
Sorry, on mute. Thank you very, very much, David, and to all of our panelists for that. That was really, really interesting. And it's so good to hear how each of you are using Connect in sort of similar and yet different ways. And we covered some great topics today. I think the sort of strategic incentivization piece is really important. It is something that comes up, time and time again with us. The low stakes assessment, again, is something that people tell us very often is something that they use Connect for very usefully. That you touched there, Orla, on the kind of preparing them for the real world as well. And again, that's something we pride ourselves on quite strongly, that Connect is there to help with the kind of application as well of theory into practice as well. So we've heard such great things from all of you. Thank you so much. For those who've been attending the webinar, we've talked a lot about Connect, obviously. I'm a very visual learner myself, so I don't know, perhaps, talking about it in this sort of abstract way, if there's, perhaps hasn't given you the full insight that you need, we offer the very elegantly termed reverse class test. We must think of a better term for that, but basically, if you would like to sign up as a student, we can create you a student account, and we'll create a very sort of small course for you. You can go in and experience it as a student, so you could see what it would feel like from that end. So if any of you are interested in experiencing a reverse class test, please just pop yes in the chat, and someone will get in touch with you as soon as possible following on from this webinar. And other than that, it just remains for me to say thank you again to our wonderful panelists. I'm very, very grateful to you for giving up your time today and for giving us such great insight. And just once more, apologies for the rocky start. Not ideal, but anyway, it came through, and you've all been marvelous. So thank you so much, and speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye, guys.
Thanks. Bye-bye.